sad news. Tom Sawyer today had a discovery of a medical condition, and he has had to step down from the finance committee. Not had to, he chose. He stepped down from the finance committee as well as the community center. Derek said his email was very glowing upon our process and how the town staff prepares a budget and comes forward. And then he sent a separate email because he's picked up by the EMS service. Very happy with the way they picked him up today. So finance committee is down to 4 individuals, which I think it's just a quorum based on who's assigned, not a quorum based on none. Okay, so, but finding others would be wonderful. So if you're that one person at home watching, if you're interested,
Come on down.
So tonight we have, well, can't even say it's a big 4 anymore. We got Public Works, Solid Waste, Police, Fire, and EMS. There was, I think, gosh, when we talked, were you gonna just go over the changes as we hit them?
Yeah, I'll go over some changes. So I sent out a change maybe about an hour and a half ago. It has to do with the library. It's just movement of numbers for accounting reasons. We'll have a change. It won't be done tonight, but probably at the next meeting. Our new hire for assistant planner. There'll be some changes there, less than what's predicted in the budget. That's all that changes.
So we got Dennis all dressed up and ready to go.
We're working against the guns and badges. Chief. Start out personnel wise, we've got 1 director, a foreman's position that's open, administrative assistant, mechanic, and 6 drivers, laborers.
Dennis, I'm gonna jump right at, my goal this year is to not have wasted money.
Okay.
Where are we at with the supervisor position?
I think we're sitting pretty good, David, to, in the spring here, it's our goal to look in-house again.
Okay.
And I'm hoping that we can come up with somebody from in-house.
Yep. Because my goal this year, I will say, and I'll say it to everybody, is if we're not filling positions, no fault of anyone's own,
Okay.
we don't need to be taxing people. So if we're habitually empty on positions, we need to make, in my opinion, I will be pushing to make some tough decisions. But I just, if you've got a plan and we got some time, okay.
Do you mind if I just update the finance committee?
Yep.
Okay, so earlier this year, we've had a difficult time attracting CDL drivers for applicants for that job. And maintaining our own people is really good because we're not like competing against other municipalities, it's private industry as well. With that being said, we increased a stipend offered to anybody holding a CDL license that works or is assigned to Public Works of $2 an hour. In turn, what we did was cut 1 position from the Public Works department because it was essentially unfilled for almost 2 years now. So we're, I think, in a better position to maintain the people that we have and offer them what they need.
Just highlights on some things we did last year. We put in a new sidewalk on the one side of Main Street from the compact line all the way up through to Union Park. With that project, we realigned the intersection of Can-Am Drive and Main Street, so it was more perpendicular. Narrowed it up a little bit, slowed down the traffic, and helped out the school buses coming out of there. Before, they were kind of creating their own turn lanes and cutting off school buses, and it made it tough on pedestrians as well. So we put in new crosswalks, delineated them, perpendicular intersections, and sidewalks on both sides of our main streets. We did many storm drain repairs throughout town. Some of our basins and some of the older sections of town is getting old, and we did a lot of repair work to those last year. Assisted several of the other departments with maintenance work and projects. Thank you to you folks. We and the townspeople, we replaced the plow truck, and we presently have ordered our forklift replacement. And we paved the Main Street project with a new sidewalk We paved that after we get through the sidewalk project. We paved Cleve Street, Townsend Way, and part of Merrimead. And we'll be coming back in the spring to finish paving in the Arbor Avenue area and the rest of Merrimead. That's funding that we currently have, and in the paving account, you'll see that it's quite a large amount that hasn't been expended. Because of the workload, COVID, Crooker Construction, who we use for our paving, wasn't able to keep up with all their scheduled work. Because we're close by to them, we kind of are, and it works out well for us. They come over and fill in with some of their days when they get a half day to come in and pay for us, and then go on to another project. The alternative to that for Topsham is that a company would come in one time, pave whatever we've got ready, or pave it all and go away. And if they have to come back again, they come back at a premium cost to us. And so by working with a local contractor like this, it's better for public works, where we do maintenance work. We don't have to get them all ready at once. We can get a few streets ready. It's easier on the traveling public and our roads and things like that, because we don't have them tore up and waiting for pavement to get done. So we kind of do an area, pave it, do another area, pave it with a contractor, and work through the logistics there. It works out well for both us and the contractor. They'll be back in the spring, sometime after April 1st, and the temperatures warm up, to continue our paving projects from this year. Questions?
I just have a comment. I like how, very much how by the school, the crosswalk, the sidewalks, and that lane to the right that went away. So people aren't coming down through, you know what I mean, by the light.
Yeah.
That was a really good thing to do.
Okay. Yeah, we worked with the planning department as well,
Yeah.
Robin Lance and we created the bicycle lane in there as well.
I can't sit there on that, because as people who go into the school, it is an absolute nightmare that has been created by, again, planning departments trying to straighten lanes and do things, and it's a disaster. The parents, it is miserable, it is lost time, late for work. It's an unmitigated disaster. So we're 50-50.
Well, I must go into the school.
Where we're all pushing up to the islands.
Oh,
Just touching base on some of the more significant changes in the appropriations budget. The safety equipment went up $500. That's due to the couple new folks that we had. So we have to buy new safety gear, helmets, just a hard hat that they have to wear. And then we have a separate hard hat for cutting brush for $100 a piece. So I mean, it adds up quick when we have those types of scenarios. The electricity cost goes up about $2,100. That's just based on our best guess for the rate increase. The account previously was labeled as sweeping. Not sure how that got created. That was before my time, but we used it to purchase brooms. But working through again with the town manager, it's really maintenance. It's vehicle maintenance. So we eliminated that line and just put that $2,000 into our vehicle maintenance account. And you'll see that in a minute when we get to that line. Storm drains, we're asking for a $14,000 increase. It's the cost of the steel that we use in the cast iron grates, storm drain materials. And also a lot of that is in the plastic pipes. The plastic resin, because of petroleum base, has really gone up. It's really crazy out there. We can't get a quote for the exact cost of something until it's delivered. They'll give us an estimate, but we don't get a price per foot until it's delivered now. So it's a tough scenario, but that's why it's such a large increase. The $10,000 is strictly a product increase. Again, it's transportation and the delivery of that product. It comes up from the south in a barge, and then it's handled by a trucking company to bring it up from Portland to Topsham. Vehicle maintenance, that's the $2,000 we're just transferring from the sweeping line up to the maintenance account. It's not an increase in maintenance, it's just a transfer from bookkeeping purpose. And the gas is just the increase. Those are actual gallons that we use at Public Works, 3,500 gallons with the appropriate $3.50.
Oh, we budgeted $4. That'll come down with the contract basis.
Derek, how come professional development wouldn't go under essential services? that he says also.
So currently, professional development that you see in central services is for town hall. The other folks currently right now have had professional development within each of their departments. Because there's a little bit more training that's involved there.
Okay. So these are more training rather than education. Like,
Training for their occupations.
yes, rather than college education.
Yes, that's a separate.
Questions on those?
Dennis, I did have one question about salt. Obviously, you guys can't really figure out what the winters are gonna be like year to year. But looking at the year to date this year and the increase to 90, I get that there's a cost increase, but then there was also, looks like a pretty dramatic use increase from the year prior. I mean, we're almost through February, well, not almost through, but I mean, it's not gonna sell a ton anymore, fingers crossed. So I'm just thinking, maybe meeting somewhere in the middle, instead of increasing to 90, maybe even just keeping it at 80. Again, we have no way to predict what the winter's gonna be like clearly. But it seems like just based on use, there might be some wiggle room there for coming down a little bit.
I question that based on this last storm we had, where it was such a mix of snow and ice, and I mean, the association I'm in just couldn't even plow around the buildings because it was so solid. I'm concerned that if we kind of shortchange ourselves, do we end up with having a lot of stuff left on the road because we can't apply this? And it looks like we're going to have the high temperatures, the low temperature swings for quite a while, which is going to raise havoc with the roads and the maintenance.
Climate change is basically making 1 or 2 large snowstorms a year versus, a ton of them. I mean,
Well, it's not snowstorms anymore, it's ice and water storms. So
Yeah.
I kind of support this. I think it's a smart thing to do, get that up there, because climate change, we don't have much snow, we have a lot of ice.
How do you, kind of building on where Matt's asking, we're at 23 now, how often do you have to take deliveries that we would see this number change a lot?
How often do I have to take deliveries? I take deliveries when I order,
Right,
and that's by.
I understand, but are you doing it 3 times a year? Are you doing it 4 times? What is this 23,000?
It's doing it as I have space in the shed,
Okay,
and as the volume is used. It's
okay,
an as needed basis is what's being ordered. It's not something I order like the sand we put up in the fall.
Yeah.
For the winter. We only have a limited amount of space in our shed for salt, so we use some. And as that space becomes available, we add it, we order it and put it back, refill that,
Yeah.
recharge that.
okay,
It has a hit in the beginning of the fall. And
right,
the salt line has a hit in the beginning of the fall because we mix salt in with our sand. So when we're putting up 1,000 yards of sand, we've got to put in, we bring in a pretty good charge of salt at that time. Put it in our sand, and then we've got to then stock straight salt. As it was kind of mentioned and shared earlier here with a couple of folks, we have gone to using more salt and less sand because the payback is in the spring and cleanup. We're doing less sweeping because we don't have the sand in the road. We're doing less catch basin cleaning. And some of the environmental folks are preferring us to use salt over sand because they claim the sand ends up in the aquifers and then warm the temperature up. The sand slows the waters down and creates poor habitat for the mud puppies and such.
Salt can't do them much good.
And,
The wellness and stuff like that, or.
and I can't disagree with you.
Right.
Again, it's what
I
I've got to
understand.
work with. There's other
Yeah,
chemicals
right.
that are more expensive.
That's right.
So I've got to work with what's available and what's cost effective for us.
We also need to be clear here. I mean, I literally do climate change work for
Right.
my work. So by saying that we're having fewer storms, that detracts from the fact that we're not having as frequent lengthy events. So we might have 1 big wallop or 2 big wallops. That's what's happening with climate. It's not that we're having 6 massive storms that are full of ice versus 6 smaller storms. I feel there's some wiggle room here. And it's only getting warmer at this point. I just don't understand. And I get the prices going up. I guess it's been some difficulty getting it in this year as well. Is that true?
So,
Yeah.
Well, we don't have to, I'm not writing off what you're saying, because I'm kind of there, but we've got a couple weeks here. Dennis is gonna take some more deliveries over a couple weeks. Maybe we see where
Yeah.
it's playing out.
I can't disagree with that. I
Yeah.
mean, I can only work with what you guys give me. If I need more than what's in the budget, I'm gonna buy it. I've got to keep the road safe, okay? I can only do my best guess. I budget to the high side, not to the low side, and then have to explain myself. So if you care to take some money out of that account, that's, I'll live with it. And if we come up in the red, I'll remind you.
so, yeah.
And I say that in justice.
Of course, yeah.
We have had,
Been there, done that.
and I will share this tomorrow night, at the selectmen meeting a little bit more in depth, but the amount of ice we're getting. And I'll call it climate change, but it's the type of storms we're getting. We're seeing sub-zero temperatures and rain a day or two later. So the ground is frozen. It has cold base. Or it comes down as wet and freezes to a solid. And now we've got to treat that. And so we're treating it with salt, not sand, to try to burn it off, to try to melt it away for traction for the folks.
Sure.
And we're getting more calls because they want to drive in December like they do in July.
Well, I'll tell you, 95 going north, down east or up east. The other day, Tuesday, was a nightmare. It would have been easier to go through a blizzard than it was, because the interstate was solid packed with ice. You couldn't pull over to one side or the other. It was horrible. So I get your nose.
The purpose of this graph is to just kind of reflect, like I had the last year or two, that it costs us less money. It's cost effective to keep our roads maintained than to wait until they get to the point where we have to rehab them, where we have to rebuild them. So it's important to keep that in mind as we budget for paving and doing overlay type work in Topsham. We've done a real good job with it, and it continues that way, but I just want to enforce the idea that if we let a road go beyond about 10 years of paving, 12 years of paving, it deteriorates quickly at that point and costs more to rebuild, to repave it and build it back up. Questions for that? Proposed paving for this year is the Bay Park area. That won't get 100% of that, but it's a lot of that area down there, the worst of the streets for sure. And also an overlay on the Mall Road, as far back as like Smitty's Panera area, back out to 196. And a lot of that work we propose to do at night. That adds to the cost a little bit, but I can't imagine being able to do that work during the daytime hours. So working through the logistics of flaggers, the added cost for flagging and the night work. We hope to include that, but we plan on including that with 650,000.
Yes, I thought I saw, are there some leftover roads that didn't get done this year that will be applied here this coming year? Oh, the reason I asked that, I thought Westland was on the schedule last year, but didn't get done. And I'm not sure about that. This is what I think. Would that carry over and get done? It really needs to.
No, Ruth, that's still scheduled to be done this spring
Oh, okay,
because we haven't spent all the funding
thank you.
this past construction season. We'll do it in the beginning of the
Yeah,
construction
got it.
season in 2022.
That's a good jumping off point. I didn't notice it last night or this weekend reviewing this, but when Dennis had mentioned how much money he had left over to pave it, it would be extremely helpful that these lines here under capital have what was budgeted, what's been spent to this point, particularly for the pavement.
Yeah, I can do that with paving. I can send a report out to you each tomorrow. It's tough because there's a lot of capital expenditures that we can't get to. Paving's probably the only thing that we can kind of take a look at.
How come we can't get to past things? How come we can't see what we've spent
The
in the
capital,
past? Yeah,
I can bring it to you next week.
okay.
I kind of left that out because we're buying equipment and it's like one-time purchases, not like the only thing that's kind of incremental is paving.
No, but it also helps though, when we sit here and let's say we bought a plow truck 2-3 years ago, whatever. I don't know. For me, I like to see what the difference is in pricing now versus what it was. It just, it's verification, it's double checking.
Yeah, I'll have that for everybody next meeting. I'll send it out.
Thank you.
Capitals, I believe Derek probably has touched on these already. Questions or we can talk about the truck 27. David, last time we bought a plow truck, I think we budgeted around 185. So just to share with you, in a year's time, it's increased that much. So, and that truck that we ordered last August, we're hoping goes on, it went online to be built in early February. So we won't be taking delivery of it for this plow season.
So Dennis, I'm all good with this and everything, but just maybe kick it in an email. Just, an inventory of the age of your trucks, what we're looking at, just so as we have to justify at town meeting, if we have to talk about why we're putting in a couple plow trucks, it's information for us to be able to speak to. That, we have a fleet of 10, but the average age is 12, 15 years, whatever it is, but I'm not looking for info on mowers, I'm just talking plow trucks and pickups.
But that's important.
I go with mileage too.
Yeah, I don't care about the mileage, because quite frankly, we use them until their floorboards run out, so. Mileage doesn't matter.
Just, you're right.
Yeah. Hours maybe, there's a diesel or something. Thank you, Dennis. Any questions?
I think overall, Dennis, you do a great job.
Does that mean you quit?
I'm out. Keep trying.
I'll put it back with it for that.
We'll just give them another reason to try to expand the size of the board.
Tag.
No friggin' time. Thanks, Josh.
I'm not to set the bar too high, so I'll just continue.
Derek, I don't really know a good place to talk about this. Because this is sort of a cross-cutting issue regarding electricity. But since Public Works is the third, allegedly our largest user of electricity in this year's budget, is there any way that you guys could project what that Naples project is going to contribute beginning in June?
Maybe.
I did some back of the envelope stuff. It looks like around 47 grand. If it's 40% of the,
For everybody. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'd say we're supposed to meet with
Nick.
Nick in the next month or so. He was our person at revision that helps us through the accounts.
Yep.
And we'll get with him and see if we can narrow it down.
I'm just adding up everyone's budget request for electricity this year, it's around 104 grand. So I'm thinking if we can cut that by 45 or so, that's not bad. Right there, especially if they can give me some numbers. But yeah, sorry about that. We don't really have a good spot for it during the meeting, so I figured I'd just get that out there now so we can start looking at it.
Got it.
Cool.
Oh, yes, really. So we know maybe in a month, 2 months and a half.
The great news is it's a revenue.
Right.
So we're not running that through town meeting. It can be just a directive, hey, we want the revenue before September's tax notes go on. We want that accounted for. So Justin does his stuff. Because it doesn't have to go through town meeting. If we say come up with a swag.
Got it.
Got it.
Sorry, go ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
talk trash. We've, not a whole lot changes with us from year to year. We pretty much hold our lines as we can. Anything that's going up for us, this is obviously our equipment and the personnel. But our big things that increase for us, other than payroll and such, as our contractual services, so waste disposal and recycling. Our biggest numbers that we increase on. And that basically is driven by the contract. We just signed a new contract, well, we will be signing, they haven't come to us yet, so we're still working on the old one. And till we start a new contract, which will be July of next year, of course, but the numbers we got figured out what we did when we chose the vendor, and based on last year's numbers, that's what we estimate that it will cost us under the new contract. Now, the price on recycling could go down as well, so that can fluctuate. We have an agreement that on the next contract that it'll still be capped at $50 a ton at the most. Right now, it's fluctuating so much. 2 months ago, we paid nothing, and actually it was a negative on the zero sort. Last month, I paid $30 a ton. So those markets are fluctuating quite a bit. Cardboard was still pulling out and bearing separate, and that seems to be paying pretty decent again. So that's kind of nice. Before it was cheaper to pay them to take care of it. So we're back into pulling that out and putting that back into our revenue source rather than expense. So we're kind of working on those things. Other than that, we haven't really changed a lot. We've added some programs. We've added the paint recycling program. Derek let me get into that, which has been a great program for the residents. And we've been shipping probably 2 pallets of paint a month, oddly enough, and surprisingly. So
What's the
it's starting
cost?
to slow down now. Pardon?
What's the cost to
Oh,
do
it's
that?
awful. It costs me nothing.
You couldn't get a better deal?
It costs you when you buy it. It's our new paint stewardship program. Basically, when you purchase your paint, in particular house paint, architectural paint, you're paying so much per pint, so much a gallon, so much a buck. And that pays for all the paint that is out there now, both latex and oil based, as long as it's a house paint, is covered under this program. And then there's some other side products as well that we can add in. Like I said, that saves us a lot of time on our household hazardous waste day. We don't get dinged for the oil base like we used to. So I mean, it's all really being taken care of to save us savings. And then also Derek allowed me to get into the we have a Veolia, which is a fluorescent light bulb recycling company. We signed a contract with them to take care of our fluorescent light bulbs. Again, at zero cost. It's part of when you're buying your bulbs, you're paying for that. We always used to ship it through and we were paying someone else to take care of them. So we got into this, they send us a box with a plastic bag liner with a cardboard liner inside of that to keep them all secure. We package them up, tape them up, call FedEx, they pick them up at the facility. It really is. And my man Bolton down there is kind of, he deals with the electronics and whatnot, tries to take care of my other bulky materials and such. And we're training them both to do it all. So it's working out pretty well.
So Ed, how does that work? So I know I always see the charge every time I'm painting.
Yeah.
So how does that money get to you?
It doesn't go to me.
So
What that does is the paint that I take, it has to be in the original container with and sealed, obviously. It doesn't matter if it's hard, it can be rock hard. They don't care. They call, as they call it, hockey pucks. They still take it. And what that does is the reason they want it in the original label is so they know which paint company to send the bill to. They're the ones that pay that bill through, or it's similar to your bottle bill.
Yeah.
It's paying for that disposal, paying for it up front. So if you don't use the paint that you have, it's covered. If you do use the paint, you're paying for someone else's everything. And since we got into it, and if we're doing it for Topsham residents only, so therefore I can take more than 5 gallons at a time. So if someone has 20 gallons in their house, we can take care of it. So it's really been a good addition to the program. I mean, we do a lot right now, so to find something new is kind of nice to have. So.
The other question I had was on the insurance benefits going down. I see payrolls dropped.
We're just really healthy.
Well,
We-
but I could correlate it to
I
the
have
fact
no-
that maybe you have less employees.
Well, I
but-
have
That's a
one
big
employee
drop.
that doesn't use our insurance.
Oh,
So
so wow.
so there's a little bit of
That's
a
a big
write-off
drop.
for us. And
Yeah.
One of his employees retired last year
Oh, okay.
and been replaced by a new employee.
And the new employee has his own.
Oh,
So-
so-
Yeah,
So we pay him a little bit just to stay off it.
well, that's where it's going.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
We don't age discriminate and it benefits us, because if we get people on Medicare, we don't have to supply health insurance.
Right.
So he's retired, so. So it's actually worked out very good. He's been an excellent addition to the crew right now. We've got probably the best crew I've had. So very happy with what we got there. Any other questions? That it? Well, just some of my expenditures, some of the reasons on those prices for the bags also increased. And that's because of the cost of the plastic right now. They've had some issues. Our last order, I would normally take 4 to 6 weeks. It ended up being 8 weeks, so it's 2 weeks almost, a week and a half without large bags because of that. But that ice storm they had in Texas a little over a year ago, it's messed up a lot of plastic manufacturing. So it slowed stuff down and things like that. So those costs have gone up for us, or I'm anticipating those are going to go up for us. And that's based on how many bags we use and what gets used. Landfill closure increase. That one up because of, you don't have it there, but that one up because of on our agreements to take care of the water in a couple of the homes on Townsend Way, plus all our water testing. And we're also looking, we don't know if we may be required to do PFAS testing. We don't anticipate it right now, but in the event that it is, that's a $300 a pop test. So kind of be proactive in that respect, kind of think we may end up doing it. They kind of suggested it, but they haven't. told us we have to. But we do, I think they do it on one house. That's it.
How often would you have to do that?
We did have a question, a resident asked us a couple months ago.
Yeah.
So we talked to the state, and the state said they did PFAS testing at a number of wells around the landfill a couple years ago. They found PFAS in the water supply for the transfer station, but they don't drink that. And one of the houses on Townsend Way had it, so that's one of the reasons they got the carbon filter system. But we kind
That's why
of,
we've got a.
we're less than state quarter back then.
fancy system. Yeah, and then our well has always been the worst well, so even when we first started, it was always don't drink the water. And I can tell you that right now, would you put the old cleaner and come back and want it? Not a good idea. Because you won't get it off. It's some bad stuff. We don't drink it, obviously. Other than that, increase in some of the costs of the shingles, they're no longer recycling those at the company, so I have to send those off in my demo at the higher cost. So that's a little bit increase there. That's it on that.
I think we've got 13 more slides for you. Just kidding.
Hoping. Right now, we do everything with the tokens, bags, coupons. Returnable bottles and metal really is, and cardboard, of course, now is one of our best revenue sources right now. Returnable bottles, for instance, we bring in between $300 and $400 a month. Oddly enough, and the people we use for redemption, they pay 6 cents. Bottles. So we're doing pretty good with this. Hopefully he stays in business and we continue to do business with him. Like I say, the markets are bouncing up and down. Cardboard's still going good, so we're doing well there. I think my revenues, I'm hoping that, they look like we should be able to, we're right on track with them right now. I'm hoping we can do a little better on some of them, just, if we can, I'd rather be right and do better. But I think we can, we started this year, we started doing a little more separation of the metal because things are running so smoothly now, we've got more time we can spend on other things. So we're separating out the aluminum, the copper, and the brass, and such. And the aluminum this year, we didn't take any time in cleaning it, so we're going to start cleaning it. So we get the top price for our clean aluminum, and the dirty aluminum will be another price. So we're going to start processing some of that because that's where one of our revenues is going to be in the future. I would say just a little more of that. So
So is somebody that comes there with whatever we're disposing of, is there anything we can do that would help sort that beforehand?
Well, yeah, I mean, as always, if you know, someone want to bring, and they do, they'll tell us, we got some copper pipe, or we got some copper wire, they see us pull it out of the metal pile and stuff. Because part of our process in the whole facility is, we go around and look at all those areas, not just for our own pickings, but to see what's there that needs to be pulled out. We pull a lot of trash out of the demo, or out of the metal pile and things of that nature. So while we're there, we pull the wire and copper that's really accessible. And it's actually proved to be a pretty good revenue source. So we gotta get a little cleaner in it. So we're gonna do it. That pretty much is capital for the JCB. Our loader, it's a 2005, but it's getting in a position now where the motor is made by one company and it was purchased by Caterpillar, and they no longer make parts for it. So a number of years ago, we had a fuel injector pump go down, and it cost us, but all of a sudden done $15,000 to get it up and running. It was the only one in the world that we were able to find. So, and the loader takes a big pounding because the tires are loaded so that we don't, because they're just going to get flats otherwise. And what we do, that adds to the wear and tear on the suspension, as well as the pins and bushings and everything else. And it's at a point now where it's going to start costing us a little more. And we're at a point where if something breaks in that particular same situation, you're down. It's very hard to get back up.
So is this the one vehicle you don't wait until the floorboards are gone?
That's what we can help.
Okay.
We're pushing it. The little red truck. Fix that all. It is in a position where it's an important piece of our operation. And I couldn't like borrow one of Dennis's because I would end up beating up, the tires would be flat, would be the first thing. And when I purchase it, I also keep in mind any hoses and lines that might get tweaked with me going over a pile of wood or brush. We don't try to, it does happen. Wood can come up. So we look at all those. And of course, we'll do what we want to do. The price here is included with a plow, a matching plow to go with it. So we new plow our facility. And with a new plow on a loader, we can even deal with the pounds and weigh a lot more and take some of the heat off the Dennis. So right now, I just pounded the crap out of the little one I got. So that's about it. I think. That's it. New picture. Any questions? No?
Good job.
All right. We're all good here. I've got some exploding kittens to get to.
Hey Dennis, before we go, I'm gonna pull you back down. You can go on that stuff. Part-time and overtime, looks like you've taken some money from one account, kind of swapped them to have a different plan going on.
No, it's just trying to balance what the expenses have been like. We'd like to get back to a part-time person, especially during summer months.
Okay.
Evening. Mark Hagan, Chief of Police.
So, we're good to go? Okay. First slide just basically goes over our staffing, or where we should be if we were up to full staff, which would be 16 sworn personnel. Right now, to be honest with you, we're 2 officers down, 2 patrol officers down. And we have another officer that's been out for a few months on leave, so we're not sure what's going on with that position at the moment. But other than that, we're up with everything. One thing you might notice different here from last year is that we cut a staffing position as far as reserve officers. In the past, we've had reserve officers, and we had one reserve officer when I came here. He was also a full-time officer at another agency, and it was too much for him to be working here and the other agency. And when he left, we chose to not have reserve officers anymore. And it's basically from a liability standpoint. It's fine and it's great if our reserve officer is also a full-time law full-time law enforcement in another location. But it's difficult for us if your reserve officer who's only working, one shift a week is a truck driver or, works in an office the rest of the time. It's just, there's a lot of training we have to go through constantly, and just the liability of having someone out there that doesn't do this full time. So when he left, we chose not to fill that position going forward.
When was that event, Mark?
Al,
Yeah, I know who it was.
Oh, I'm sorry.
When did he, I just see part-time payroll hasn't reduced in any way. So when was that?
well, so I'm sorry, to cut you off, but when he left, we cut 6,500 from reserves. But what happened there was our crossing guard. We have a crossing guard that works 16 hours a week.
Yeah.
And she was seeing that other areas, towns around us were paying much, much more, to be honest with you. So to keep her, we gave her almost a $4 an hour raise. And, we talked about it at length, and what it really came down to is to try to find somebody that's reliable for 16 hours a week is next to impossible. So it's a typical situation. You're far better keeping the people that you have already than to try to replace them. So expenditures, roughly 91% of our budget is tied up in personnel, wages, benefits, and other contractual items. And I'll jump down to professional equipment. This line item covers all new equipment that we need to purchase. Last year when I got here, we purchased 5 tasers. I say purchase, but we're leasing that. We're on a lease program with that. So that's costing us $2,500 a year over a 5-year contract. Even the part of the taser program is training cartridges. So taser makes each officer fire at least 2 taser cartridges a year as part of their training to keep you up to date. But you'll see on the side there, it's $56 a cartridge just for a training cartridge that doesn't do anything. And to be honest with you, we don't care for the prices, but the simple fact is taser is the only game in town. They've patented the whole taser program. They sue anybody that tries to come up with an electronic weapon along those lines. So we're stuck with whatever they charge us. So that's another big expenditure that comes out every year right now. And we never know when that could increase. Our radar units need to be calibrated. So that's $700 annually. We're switching over. We have some shotguns. We're switching those over to less lethal. Gives us another option. It doesn't take much to either read or hear in the news. There's a lot more people with mental health issues, and it just gives us another option if we can't get close enough to use a taser. And to be honest with you, taser doesn't always work in the winter because people wear large jackets. We need the taser probes to actually get into the skin to function. So the less lethal shotguns will give us a much better option. All of our canine costs also come out of this line item, whether it's veterinary bills, ordering when our canine officer is on vacation insurance is roughly $2,200 a year just for insurance on the canine. Bills, you never know what it's going to be. To be honest with you, our canine had it will look like an ear infection recently. And when we brought him in for that, it ended up being an $1,100 bill just to work on the ear. So we never know where that's a kind of a fluctuating cost. So at the end of the day, as far as the professional equipment goes, there's a $2,500 increase this year. But in my defense, last year I was trying to save money and I cut $3,700. So we're still below where I started when I came here on that particular line. Uniforms and equipment's another big expenditure for us. The issue with that is that's a contractual issue. Each officer gets $850 per contract a year for their uniform allowance. When we hire a new officer, just to get a new officer outfitted is roughly $4,400 by the time we purchase all their uniforms, all the leather gear, jackets, and so forth. So that's a pretty big line item for us. Then we end up with the issues like we had just recently where we hired an officer in October and he decided to 3 or 4 weeks ago, he didn't like law enforcement after all that. So now pretty much we're out to add again, and we'll be holding up all the brand new uniforms to our applicants and see who fits better, and maybe that'll be part of the process. We're gonna pick up. So-
Bring Gary Howard and get, find someone we did it.
Is
I'm
it-
sorry?
What's your close size on the?
Yeah, it's unbelievable, but, so we've got it all, we've got a little, what we call the East store next door, just like Bean has, and we're see if the next applicant is about the same size, we can save some money there.
Is there any such thing as size discrimination?
Well, we'll probably find out soon enough, so I won't be admitting if that's why we don't hire somebody, let's put it that way. Vehicle maintenance, $21,000, we have 11 vehicles, 8 of them are fully marked. Again, there's a $4,000 increase this year, but last year, again, in my defense, I cut 5,000 trying to save money, and we're getting up there on our maintenance this year. One of the answers we keep getting when we ask about the cost of everything is the price of everything is up this year, and the price of ordering vehicle parts, if you can find them, is also increased. So we do, to be honest with you, if you weren't aware, we do use a local business right here in town when we can for at least oil changes and any small maintenance. But excuse me, if it's anything with the newer cars that needs to be covered by warranty or so forth, we have to go across the bridge to Brunswick. So the one thing that our local businesses advise us of is with hybrid vehicles, you won't be able to do much with those, so we'll be paying a much higher cost per hour once we get those. In case you're wondering, we did order one in September. It was originally supposed to be here at the end of February, but we won't be shocked to hear that's been backed up now until probably early April. So we're waiting on that right now. Fuel costs, we have a bit of an increase there this year. The primary reason being we're using right now $4 per gallon as an estimate. We were using 170 last year. So right now the estimate is about 14,500 in fuel that we'll be going through.
I have a question on that hybrid, the electrical. We gonna have our own fueling station, electrical plug-in?
It's not electric, it's yeah, it's not electric, so it's just a hybrid. It shuts itself off sometimes and so forth. So no, we haven't gone there. So
Combustion engine powers the battery. It doesn't actually-
Which one did
hopefully not in police form. Yeah. No, I haven't either, thankfully. So it'll be tough, it's just one of those things. It's tough to, if we have to put an officer in another car. Well, if we have to use the same car for 2 shifts in a row, at some point we would have to charge it. And so it's just a new issue that we haven't had to deal with yet.
Any of our,
I was just gonna ask, so on the overtime increase, I probably missed it at the beginning. Is that because you're shorthanded and people are working more hours?
Yeah, to be honest, I figured if I didn't talk about that, nobody would ask. But, yeah, we've got a bit of an overtime issue this year, and we had a couple officers retire, or at least one retire last year. A couple officers have left for other reasons. We have been basically 4 officers down. We hired 2 in the spring into the summer. We sent them to the academy in August, but the academy is 4.5 months long. So they were gone until December. So we were down those 2 officers because they were gone, and we were also down 2 positions. So we've been going with roughly 1/4 of the PD being gone, and we have to fill, we're at least keeping, so we have 2 officers per shift. I'll be honest with you, there are still some nights we're going with 1 officer from probably 3 to 7 in the morning, but we're trying to avoid that. We've moved people around. The lieutenant is normally on days with me, but he's been filling some shifts. So we're doing what we can to cover that. Now, the big increase for next year is, right now we're 2 officers down. There's potential we could be 3 officers down. One of our new officers still needs to go to the academy. He's listed for August. And if we hire 2 officers, short of having a certified officer, they're also going to have to go to the academy. So they'll be gone for 4.5 months as well. So we are already looking at this next year being at least 3 officers down. So that's what we see.
Thank you.
Does not having gone through the academy limit them in any way in what they can do?
Yes, you know, the academy, again, in 4.5 months, they get so much training that even on field training here, we can't do everything. They can't legally get in a high-speed pursuit, which, to be honest with you, I'm fine with, but they can't handle a personal injury, crash. There's a few other things that they're just not in a position to handle because unfortunately with our job, there's only one way to get experience usually, and that's by actually doing it. So one of the new officers is just riding with one of our training officers because they haven't seen enough yet to be able to be out on their own. So there's quite a learning curve, and it's a lot of downtime as far as even when we hire somebody, not being able to put them right out on the road by themselves. As far as our training goes, we use a risk management approach. You know, we try to look at into the future, ask what can go wrong. And after we try to plan on what we think can go wrong, then we provide training to our personnel to try to deal with those situations, whether it's active shooter situations, defensive tactics, you know, the big one right now and has been for the last couple of years is mental health issues. In addition to that, the Maine Criminal Justice Academy, I've been talking about the program. It's $3,000 per cadet that goes there. So right now we have $9,000 in the budget for the intent of having 3 officers go. We had $9,000 in this year's budget. We've sent 2. We were hoping to get the other 2 officers into the academy it's going right now, but we didn't make it. So now it's switching over to next year. Deergo Safety and Dago Law Group. There is a lot of training that we are mandated through the state to give to our officers. And we now, instead of having to send officers to a lot of the training, we can do it online. And so that's why we pay those companies and we're able to log in and take care of a lot of our training. And then the remainder that's out of that isn't already accounted for is each officer, in addition to what the state mandates, they have 20 hours of training that they have to do annually. And so, you know, we have to send them to some training. So that's what the additional money is for. The medical line, that covers whenever we're hiring a new officer, you know, we have to have physicals, we have to have psychological exam, a polygraph exam. As you can see, those are $600 each for every individual. Even if we don't hire them, they still have to have those tests. And if we're looking at them, you know, there's been a couple people we've had to give. We've given the test to here just since I've been here that something came up in their polygraph and we didn't hire them, but we still, you know, putting that cost in. When you see the drug kit tests, the blood urine tests, that is a fee that's fairly new to us. The state used to cover these costs if we stop somebody, if we're dealing with somebody that's either driving, you know, while under the influence, or we've got a probation on, you know, somebody on probation or somebody we deal with that isn't supposed to have any drugs in their system. State used to cover these costs, and now we cover the costs. The state doesn't cover it anymore, and the tests are fairly expensive, as you can see by the numbers. So we budget for those just in case we have them. That's one of those things, you don't know when you're gonna come across somebody that, you know, you might need to give a blood kit to, a blood test, or, you know, urine test or something. So I think I've got budgeted, to be honest with you, for 3 tests annually on some of those and 5 the other. And we might find a year where that's too much, and we didn't need that many, or we might find a year where we go over those.
Do they have an expiration date on them? Do they expire after a while if you don't use them?
I believe it's a few years, but the cost isn't the actual kit that we have. The cost is we have to send these out of state. The state doesn't even, they're behind. So they're sending everything to, right now, I think it's somewhere in Pennsylvania, but we just got a bill for one. And it's their cost to get it. And then they just gave us a new spin. They got the test and they said it was an extra fee to get a certified copy for it. So that was a good time.
Labs can't do this?
They're, I don't know if they can't get certified through the state, but I know the state has been outsourcing.
Yeah,
So And then we have our capital expenditures. And this year, we're asking for two fully marked cars. Last year, we received one. And that just gives you a quick breakdown of the costs generally of the cruisers. New equipment, we're still in the process. What happened a few years ago was Ford changed the makeup of their vehicle, which changed not only the inside of the vehicle, the outside of the vehicle. So every law enforcement agency had to start buying all new equipment because none of the equipment we had for years in the cars would fit in the new vehicles. So that's why 12,000 sounds like a lot, and it is a lot, to be honest with you, to get the new equipment that's needed in the vehicles. And we've been warned by the person that builds the cars for us, that actually orders the equipment, that the costs are going to be going up like everything else because everything has to be shipped here. So I will, if you are interested, I don't know, Derek, does everybody have a copy of the capital improvements that shows the mileage? I don't know if anybody has questions about.
You can show that. I received that a while back, so I can understand.
So what I'm just handing out to you is just in case you have any questions about why we want two cars one year and one car the other. The plan here, as I worked it out, so everybody has a copy of it, but at the top, you'll see all of our vehicles listed. And where I don't want to talk too far ahead, so you all know what I'm talking about. Hopefully everybody has copies. Okay. So when you, Dennis, you want to look, you can come look at mine. We don't drive ours till the floorboards are gone or whatever the earlier statement was. So
They're special, Dennis, we're sorry.
So when you look at this, what you'll see is FY22, the year we're currently in. The plan was our cruiser that we're replacing is highlighted in yellow, and we thought that would have about 80,000 miles on it at the time that it got replaced. Now, what has happened is this car that we have on order, it keeps getting backed up, so that will have significantly more than 80,000 on it. Right now, the two cars that we're planning on replacing for next year, if this goes through, one will have 95,000, the other will have 102,000. And as you keep looking, you'll see the mileage on each car, the probable mileage on each car as we replace them. And the big thing that I would stress here is it's generally accepted you don't want to have more than 100,000 miles on a frontline cruiser. And the primary reason seems very obvious, but it's not to most people, which is it's kind of hard miles that we're putting on the cars. It's a lot of stopping, starting, turning fast. It's wear and tear on the vehicle. And generally what you will find, and I've only been here, 18 months now, so I don't have any numbers for you, but after 100,000 miles on a car, the maintenance goes increasingly, it's more expensive. So, we could save on purchasing a car, but the numbers will go up as far as, equipment and or what has to be replaced in our vehicle maintenance costs. And you run into higher opportunities and chances of having accidents and crashes because of maintenance failure. So this is our plan. If anybody had any questions on that, as far as our capital improvement in our cars, right now, you'll see each car is being replaced at just about 100,000, if not, in a couple of years. Right now, we'd be looking at 119 on one of the cars. A few years down the road, we'd have 120. What we're trying to do is, if a car looks like it's ahead of where we thought it would be as far as mileage, we'll move it to like the school resource officer's car that doesn't get used as much. So we're trying to play around back and forth. The one positive of being short-staffed right now is we're not putting as many miles on cars as we would if we were. The other two pieces that I had up here were we put into the budget for facility camera system. The camera system that we have, and I don't mean the cruiser cameras or the body cameras that we have, but that's just the camera system for in the PD. We have to have cameras in the booking area. We have to have cameras outside along the front of the building. And we are looking at replacing those. We have several of our cameras either don't work or will freeze up, and we have to try to unfreeze them. And the issue with that will be, maybe we don't need the cameras out back sometimes, but if somebody damages a car, or if we end up in a situation where a couple of years ago, where there's protests and somebody starts damaging things, or if our officers get into an altercation outside when they're bringing a prisoner in. Now, in case you're wondering, yes, we'll have the body cams, so that will protect us a little bit, but these don't always show everything in some type of issue. The other issue will be if somebody goes into the booking area, we have to shut our body cameras off if we're doing intoxilizer tests, because they say that interferes with the intoxilizer, so we still need cameras in there. And those cameras go to the Saginaw Regional Communications Center. So if we do have an officer working either by themselves in the middle of the night or the other officers on the road, right now the dispatch center is the one that's watching those cameras saying there's a fight in the station, we need to get other people there. So we have an obvious issue if the camera system goes down. When we've had some people come in and they're like, this is antiquated. I think it was put in 2014, and they said it's just out of date. So the first company that we talked to gave us the 18,000. We're obviously looking for other estimates, but I had to throw something in because we were doing the budget numbers obviously a month ago. And then the in-car body worn camera system, that's part of the 5-year lease, and the second payment is $20,830.
Mark, do you mind if I just add a few things to that?
Not at all.
The facility camera system, that's within our capital, it's just $25,000. Part of that same company is doing an estimate here at Town Hall. We'd have 2 cameras on the inside focused on the entryways, as well as a camera that's out facing the parking lot that is look at the ballot box and the tax return seats, and one that faces the other way going out the other direction. That came to be about $6,400. Those 2 combined estimates. But that one company that we're talking about also does our access control. It's just an estimate, but we go through the process of getting other estimates and bring it to the select board. The in-car body worn camera systems at that price as part of the lease agreement, that's within the police department budget under leases and licenses. But that budget also includes that budget line. Also includes the K9 app track software, radar trailer software. And yeah, that's it. So that totals about $25,000. I kept that separate from the leases and licenses and the central services, because it's primarily all just PD. And it's just easier to control right now. We'll see how that works out.
So we'll see if people take more stand. Right?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
We'll see if people are taking more stand than they're allowed at this point, right?
Yeah, we'll watch the.
Those contractors back out there.
So that, I think that was the last slide that I have, but obviously I can answer any questions. Go ahead.
So, oh, sorry, go, Gail.
You outranked me, does that?
Oh, I want you to go because I'm gonna be a long time.
Find out what was it? Going back to the crossing guard, you only mentioned one,
Yes.
and that covers both elementary schools?
Yeah. Well, she does, I know she's on Elm Street because I see her every morning.
That would be the women's cone. I mean, what's it? I can't remember the name of the other,
But she does.
Woodside.
Woodside. Thank you.
Yeah, they probably don't need one over there.
Go over there.
Yeah, I don't think she covers over there. I think she takes care of
Women's
that and,
cone.
In
out
a
on 196 or Upper
Right.
Maine, whatever you want to call
busy
it.
road.
Going in 201, yeah.
So the opening is a tiny difference between the
Yes,
elementary. and the
Yep,
secondary.
everybody gets out at
Okay.
the high school earlier.
All right, I was just thinking there were 3, and we should have.
Yeah, and there's only sidewalks on the one side of Woodside, on the side of the school, so it's probably not as much crossing.
Both of them.
So I'll get to you in a second. We obviously, and this isn't gonna change, have vehicles, this backlog of ordering and waiting and such. We go through town meeting May 25th. Everything's approved. we don't usually see departments to us until September to start ordering vehicles. If we were to start this process June 1st, starting the orders, we're not putting any money out when we place an order. Is that accurate? Or do we pay? No, we don't pay until we take delivery. So I think we need to start thinking about, we can save 2 to 3 months.
Get orders as soon as July 1st.
I know, I think we can get a couple months earlier. We can talk about it, but I think we've got to start having that conversation because when you got vehicles that are hitting 100, eventually we'll hit 112,000. If we're still 119,000 in 2 years.
I think we can talk about it when the after town meeting, the vote, maybe we could probably do something like that, but.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I'm just putting it out there.
I mean, like we saw, we're just finding this out, like, here,
Yeah.
this is all new. Our Parks and Rec truck that we had ordered, that was presented, it was promised to us in 5 weeks. And we just got word that it's going to be delivered in a couple of weeks. So this has been months and months of waiting. The idea of getting that was to get it before winter.
Yeah.
So it's hitting every department, all assets.
No, and I don't know if there's an end to the cycle, at least in this year. So I'm just thinking we got to start to think differently than what we've been doing.
That would be appreciated, because we did miss the first wave of orders while we were doing this process. So they told me right up front that we were gonna be behind the ball on this.
I think if we ordered it after town meeting, I wouldn't see an issue.
Right, June 1, so
I'm sure.
yeah.
So were you guys saying that you don't have to pay for it when you order it?
No, we won't
Put any
pay
money
until.
down?
June delivery.
Oh,
That's right, it's good.
okay.
You better do it.
So my soapbox comment earlier about, I don't support funding things that we're just not hiring. And no surprise, it's not you, it's your industry, right? You know, it's the greatest offender. And it's not offender,
I
you
get
know what
it, I
I'm,
get
you
it.
know what I'm doing.
I hear you.
It's a large police issue with zero end in sight. No matter how anybody talks about, we'll throw this $10,000 sign-on bonus. It doesn't matter if the next guy's doing 11. If they don't want to be here and they want to go arrest dirty people in Bedford, they'll leave here and go deal dirt bags.
Yeah, those don't work anyway.
Right.
Sign-ons.
Right, it's all cool. We just have to start thinking about, you know, in reality, the people you're waiting to send to the academy, I don't worry about those being shortages, right, or people in the academy. Those are working through a system. But when we have a 13-person patrol department, maybe a 14 if you count the SRO, but we're always too short, and it's long before your predecessors, this is just the police service, and we have to accept it at some point. I think there needs to start to be a conversation of, I raise my hands to add people, but if we can't find them, and it's the same thing I said to Dennis, and he had a different scenario. But we've just got to be able, we can't keep funding stuff that we can't fill. Though having one person on overnight, maybe there needs to be a conversation, I'm sure you already have. The county pays attention a little bit. There's county people available overnight. So.
Well, the issue is, and hopefully they don't mind me saying this, Saginaw pays for one deputy to be out all night. So that person might be in Richmond, they might be in Pittsburgh. We don't know where they are. Yeah.
I just, we're cranking up overtime payroll. You have to, I get it. But we're continuing to carry the same amount of full-time payroll and never, ever utilizing it. And when we start talking carrying 2 people, you're talking, $180,000 a year with benefits and salary, uniforms that they don't use, or, I mean, it's a lot of money.
Is Brunswick and Bath experiencing the same, I would imagine?
Nationwide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brunswick, I'll tell you right now, just spoke to them this morning, there's 6 officers down. But they're in a position where the larger the PD, they can kind of absorb it a little better. I think Bath is up to staff, I think SAG's down 1 or 2, Lisbon's down. So, yes, it's a nationwide issue.
Yeah, I mean, push comes to shove, do you guys have a relationship that you could at 3 o'clock in the morning to be calling them in if you don't have anybody else?
Yeah, I know a couple of people over there, so they're,
Oh, yeah, I
they're
know.
willing to, we're all willing to help each other out.
But-
The biggest issue comes from, if they're busy on a call. You know, from experience, I can tell you, if you get into a struggle with somebody,
Oh,
a
yeah.
minute, it's not like TV, a minute feels like an hour. And trying to get to your radio and call and explain where you are, and so, but it's,
Yeah, no,
it
I
can be,
understand.
you know, serious injuries or
I,
worse.
yeah. I hate to see one person go out at night on a call, and I know, you
Yeah.
can't help. I really, I think it's dangerous. I think that's for the reason you just said. And I was thinking that along when you said one person, you don't like to do it, but if you have to. And what do? It is nationwide. And I agree with Dave, throwing money and sinus bonuses and competing is not the way to go for any of this. And everybody, it isn't just police, it isn't just fire and EMS. It's a lot of careers. People aren't gonna wanna do anything, public works and anything, it's just a lot of careers. There isn't just one thing. And make it very easy for some. So. I said my say,
The hard part is, if you're trying to hit 16,
Yeah.
and I think at one point you were almost there this past year. And maybe you're lucky if you can keep 14. If you cut it down, you're only trying to hit 15, maybe only hit 13, the lower you, maybe you're never gonna hit your caps, but if you lower the top you're shooting for, you're gonna have less and less actually there, and you start having more and more of a crisis of filling your shifts.
Yeah.
And if the money doesn't get spent, in essence, it gets rolled over to next year because it goes into the surplus. So it's not wasted, it just isn't spent this year.
Yeah, this is a topic that we talk about all the time,
oh,
and it started years ago. And, one of the things that we're faced with, and we started this in the last negotiations that we had, we raised our patrol line quite significantly to make sure we could attract some people. We just haven't caught up. We can't. And now what's happening is becoming more competitive. And, we listened to all the points here from Chief and from Mark, who's got a lot of experience, and everybody's got a valid point. One of the things that we are faced with right now is the lack of housing to bring people into the area. So what's happening is you're essentially stealing from other municipalities or agencies because you have to offer better benefits or wages because you're not getting people coming in from out of the area because it's frankly no place to live.
well, that's there again, that's in a lot of places too.
Right. So
The squeeze is everywhere on that, so,
that's what we're faced with, and I've
Right.
had to comment a couple times, keep what you have
right.
and try to attract people to fill in those vacancies.
But my point is, all the public relations, all the negativity around our service people. One of the most dangerous positions and all the news and all, it just isn't popular to say, it used to be cool to be a police officer. It's not cool anymore. I think it is here, but
I think you're cool, Mark. don't
I
Thank
think
you.
mine,
Appreciate
mine
that.
knows I think he's
Talk about
cool.
There's another piece here that hasn't really been mentioned,
I've
at least
known
from
it
somebody
for a
who's not a
long
law
time.
enforcement officer, is the academy. When COVID hit, they shut down like everybody else did
Oh,
for a
that's
period of
true.
time. So there's such a backlog, and when they say we can't get academy spots, staff that we're fine, there's not enough billets. And so that's something that could,
So
I know
that's
the talk is out
contributing
there.
to the problem as well.
Yes.
It's not just trying to find people, but they've got to go into the academy and you're.
One of the officers that we hired over a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, just finished the academy. It was the first spot available for him.
Yeah, the academy, well, with COVID, hit the academy the same way, so they weren't running the regular academy. And they also count on mostly volunteers. By volunteers, other law enforcement officers go and teach most of the classes. So agencies are all short, they're having trouble getting, because what we tried to do, to be honest with you, is get the academy to start running more academies. Just at the time they were saying they were going to, COVID hit. And then there were fewer officers, a lot of officers in the last couple of years have retired, so that PDs don't have enough people to send up there. It's a big wave of a number of things that have really hit us all at once.
this is a longer issue than COVID. I mean, it's been forever, and I just, there's got to be a new, whether we look at things, there's got to be a new tactic
There is.
in the
Yeah.
industry. It's,
Yeah, I agree, Doug, because I mean, even the IW's been experiencing this probably for 10 years
Yeah.
now. You know, way before COVID. They have attrition, natural attrition that's happening, and they're just not replacing those positions, so.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, Mark, that if we cut our number to 15, it's a shorter goal. And this will probably, I mean, I'm not opposed, quite frankly, saying we have a 16-person department. There's no way in heck we're ever gonna spend 16 people's work. Yeah, it's gamble of the dice. Maybe we have to egg on our face and go to a different town meeting, and miraculously, he ran a whole year with 16 people. But I'm willing to bet there's probably a large sum of money here that we'll never touch. And I know it rolls over, and I know what rollover does, right? Rollover is, oh, that pot of money. This was a project we've been pushing off, let's do this. So it all ramps together. You know, rollover. I just don't want that rollover.
I'll tell you that
No, go.
we need at least 15 to have 2 officers per shift. So that is one plea I would make if we do end up getting to that point. I need at least 15 so that I don't have people working by themselves in the middle of the night.
I agree with that. So what's your shifts? What are the shift hours?
Well, they're a little broken up, but we have a regular, what you would call day shift, 7 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon. And we have a 3 to 11, and then we have 11 to 7. But we also have some 10-hour shifts where we try to move the officers to be out here when we have the most traffic and the most calls.
Thank you.
We still from the district getting 100% of the pay when they're with the school.
The school, they pay, what are we at, 60%, I think, reimbursement with the school, 60, yeah, so,
Because 60% of their time is in the school. So anytime they're there, it's 100%.
yeah,
Yes,
basically.
yes, okay. I know if we take advantage of it, we okay.
Now, the only thing I'll explain with that is, we ask whoever the school resource officer may be, don't take time off during the school year because there's a little bit of an expectation there, right? So we end up in the summer, we always hope we'll get that person back or extra patrol help in the summer when we're busier. But the simple fact is we ask them not to take any of their time off, so we usually lose our school resource officer in the summer for a good part of it because they're taking the time off that we asked them not to take for the rest of the year.
But that doesn't really impact the mill rate in the end, because you're either putting it here or here, and the sum total is the same. So your mill rate is not going to be impacted.
But it's
Because
when you get the other 3 communities chipping in for a portion of that.
Oh, okay. Then that-
That's the difference.
Because I was looking at when you said the other night about how much, like $1,000 would impact the mill rate, and it looks like it'd be about 10,000 before you get any difference on the mill rate. So,
Yeah.
true, but I
That
mean,
was his point.
Yeah, you gotta look at the other 3 communities are picking up,
part of that, okay.
80% of that, 60%, whatever, however the number plays out, I have no idea.
Okay.
All good? Thank you. I appreciate your
Thank
time.
you.
And I should take a quick second, if you don't mind, to just thank you again for helping us out with the body cameras earlier in the year. I know we didn't have the full amount budgeted, but I gotta be honest with you, it has saved us a couple times. If I saved us, I've had complaints where I was able to pull out the officers. We've only had these actually functioning on the road since early January, and I've already had a couple situations where somebody made a pretty big stink about a complaint, the way the officer was. And I was able to pull up the video and see that it wasn't an issue at all. And to be honest with you, I called the people back and asked them to come in and watch a video with me so we could talk about it. And nobody's interested and nobody's returning my calls. I'm used to people not returning my calls. In this particular case, I guess it's showing us that, at least the initial investment is proving worthwhile. So I appreciate you all for that.
We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Is there a revenue source of like streaming those videos sometimes?
I'm sure there'd be people that would pay for it, you'd be shocked.
I would watch, I'd watch it on repeat.
The revenue source is not to stream them.
Yeah.
I'd cancel Netflix to have that on my TV.
That might be extortion.
Good evening, Chris McWall, Fire Chief. So we'll run down real quick. You can see there, we have a fire chief, deputy chief, 4 full-timers. We run 40 or so per diem call members combined. And then I have 4 SMC college students that live at the station during their schools in session. There's no changes to those numbers from last year. That's all the same as far as the budget goes. You can see a quick recap of call volume. We've been consistent over the last 2 years, just over 1,800. So that only changed by 5 calls. Our EMS calls were up, 60 some odd calls, 66 calls. But you can see those numbers there. So it was relatively the same. Revenues, we've really been tweaking revenues. We had to take some money. Kathy might be able to explain a little bit better, but we wrote off some, what was it, bad debt, Kathy? We wrote off some bad debt, which affected our revenue from last year because we went back several years to do this. So going forward, we're going to do it every year rather than a big $120,000 chunk out of the revenues. We'll do it every year from now on. So that's going to change a little bit, but we're still projecting on track. You can see through 2/1, we are at 271 in revenues for the year. So we're projecting right about where we should be.
How does bad debt affect them?
Because we, at year end, we billed what they billed, but we haven't received yet.
Oh, so you actually hold it as a receivable?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
correct.
all right, I thought it was just cash purchase, okay.
Nope.
So doing that every year will be much better, much more efficient. As far as expenditures go, there's a few changes. Overtime, you can see that line was up in the budget. There's a couple of things for that. We're going through some of the same things PD did, but over the last 2 months, COVID has taken a hit on our ability to cover shifts. We were down 8 people for a 2-week span. That's a lot of hours. I will say none of it came from us and patients. It was all kids at home, relatives. The other thing with the overtime line is that's fairly new. It was, I think, put in the budget 2 years ago. So to try to estimate overtime is pretty hard if you've never had it. So this year we were able to go back 6 months, me and Kathy did, and we could see what we averaged for overtime. And then the other piece is we moved some money from the part-time line and moved that over into the overtime line. So in my part-time line, I requested a $2 an hour increase for all my per diem employees. That brings the basic EMT from $15 an hour up to $17. So you can make $15 an hour doing just about anything right now. So
Slinging burgers.
yeah, and I honestly, I don't know if $2 is enough, but I do know our morale over there is very high. We have good customer service. We have kept our roster of 50. I just don't want to lose them.
Right.
And we've had some people that have dropped some shifts lately to go to Booth Bay or Sabatis or some other places that are offering significantly more money because they're per diems. Some of them live here and they'll work no matter what it is, but some will chase the money. So we want to make sure we stay within the realm of what other towns are doing to keep those per diems that we have, because we got a real good group of per diems that really supplement our staffing. So even with that increase, you can see the part-time line is still down from last year because we moved some of that into the overtime line. So that even with that $2 an hour increase, we're still down about 10 grand in that line. And like I said, it got shifted to a different line. So and then going through the rest of the budget, the other major changes.
Chris, just,
Yeah.
you have radios, and it probably falls in with Mark. Equipment maintenance, we're still gonna always have a maintenance portion of.
We will, because there's a radio system within the station. Like they came a month ago and updated some speakers. I hired 4 new call people, had to buy pagers for them. Those are 6 or 7.
So those are, that's not gonna change with this whole SAG.
No, but I won't have to, I was able to reduce it because I was buying a couple portables a year. And now I don't have to do that.
They're gonna buy the portables, we're just maintaining. Would that be?
Oh, with SAG, no, we'll have to still buy portables, but we just had that purchase last year and replaced everything. So that's why I was able to reduce it. So our maintenance should be nearly as high because we replaced all those radios last year.
Okay.
Yeah, they're just doing the infrastructure, the big stuff.
All right.
And that's it as far as my general budget goes. Capital, I try to look ahead with capital a couple of years. And back in 2019, I looked ahead to see what we had coming up, and squad one was was set for due this year. And I sat down to do a needs assessment on that, like, what do we really need? Are we utilizing this truck as it was? What is it gonna cost to replace it? I reached out in 2019 to Greenwood and said, hey, what does this truck cost if I was to replace it? And they told me $275,000. We bought it in 2003 for 148, so that's about right. But I can't sit here and justify $275,000 for a truck that we don't utilize as it was designed to be utilized. When we bought that in 03, the entire back of that in the middle, not where the cabinets are, is all extrication equipment. But since we bought new engines, we put extrication equipment on the engines. So this truck as an extrication vehicle is only a backup, and we can do the same stuff with a smaller utility vehicle. And I can buy a battery powered extrication tool and not have to have the hoses, the hydraulics, the pumps. So we're looking at something more like that to replace the squad, because the squad does carry cones, road signs, vacuums that if a sprinkler head pops, we got to mop, vacuum the floor, carry some cribbing for extrication. We can fit most of that into a utility vehicle and spend significantly less. And I think we'll get just as much use, if not more use out of it. So that was the idea of the utility truck in place of the squad. The other piece of this project is we've had 2 4-wheelers over there. This is my 5th town meeting. I know time flies, and I have never seen those used. They're 2005, 2007. There's several reasons why. I think the biggest reason is they're not practical for anything. Can't carry equipment on them. I can't carry people on them. I can't carry stokes basket. I can't carry forestry pumps. They have no seat belts. They have no rollover protection. They're not utilized. They've been sitting there for 4 years I've been there. So one thing we've looked at, a couple of years ago was a side-by-side, and we tried at Firehouse Grants 3 times for a side-by-side. And this kind of started back, it was probably 3 falls ago. I had a shooting on Cadiance Road where the hunter got shot. We ended up putting the hunter in the back of some guy's pickup truck and drove him out in the bed of the pickup truck. And we had a 4-wheeler accident this last fall where the kid drove himself out with a broken collarbone, broken ribs, and a head injury. Just this last weekend, we had a snowmobile pinned under a snowmobile. It ended up being nothing, but we had to call a UTV from Bowdoin or Yarmouth. Mainly because, and Bowdoin only has 3 people on their roster last I checked. So that's why we had Yarmouth going as well. The other piece of this is we're going to share it with PD. I've talked to Chief Hagan. They can utilize it for if they have to search for somebody, a dog K9 goes out in the woods, anything like that. It's going to have a forestry pump on it so we can get into those hard to reach forestry places, along with a basket to carry a patient out. So we'll be able to use it for EMS and fire. The other uses are the solid waste facility and all those trails, horsebacking, skiing. I'm trying to look ahead to all the recreation that's out there. I had some pretty nasty horse riding accidents and biker accidents in my years, and we really don't have a good way to get them out from those trails. And then the fairgrounds, if we had the fair, we can have it up there with EMS equipment. So there's a lot of uses for something like this versus those 2 4-wheelers sitting there. So in the end, what I come up with is we can spend significantly less money. So instead of $275,000 to replace the squad truck as it sits, we can do this whole project for half the price. And it meets our needs a lot more than what it did 20 years ago when we bought that squad, when we bought squad 1. So that was my capital plan. The only other piece of the capital, I don't know if it was in my presentation, was the skid unit for Forestry 6. Now, I wasn't here when we bought Forestry 6, but I've been told that the town decided not to replace the skid unit. What the skid unit is the Forestry is a pickup truck with a forced pump in it. The pump is a 1993, and at the time we bought the truck, the town said we're not going to replace the skid unit at this time. Come back in the next budget or 2 to replace that skid unit, and that's $15,000 for that. So I've kind of forgot about it, to be honest with you, but it was mentioned to me about a year ago that we still had that project from 2017 when we ordered the brush truck. So that's a 1993 pump in the back of the brush truck.
So what do you do with the existing ATVs?
A couple things. I looked them up. They're worth about a couple thousand a piece. So we could trade them towards the UTV, or we could put them out to bid and the way prices are right now, four-wheelers and snowmobiles, you probably do pretty well.
Is there any concern about liability for the safety issues on that? if we
No, because
sell?
it's a recreational ATV.
Okay, so,
We just can't, I mean, for me, I really have somebody in a seatbelt with rollover protection when they're going to get a victim out is much more safe than an ATV, but those ATVs, people still buy them and use them.
okay.
Yeah, I'm surprised they're not worth more than that.
Well, they might be, I just looked up a couple, I looked them up on KBB, Kelly Blue Book, and that's what they were. One was 2,400, one was 1,900, but like I said, the price of that type of stuff right now, you might be able to get 3,000 for each of them, 3,500 for each of them. And it can offset the cost of the UTV or trailer, whatnot.
Speaking of trailer, would they sell a trailer with a platform and like a stretcher you can put on the existing ATV?
Oh, sell a trailer?
Yeah.
You can buy they make a sled for patients that comes with wheels and comes with skis. And you can tow those behind four-wheelers. But as far as a forestry pump, I've never seen a forestry pump that you can tow behind a four-wheeler. Yeah. But I'm still missing seat belts and help, the ability to put 3 or 4 people in it and go into a remote fire, or P, put a perpetrator in the back seat that they just arrested and drive them out or wherever they may have chased it into with the dog or the canine. But I have seen the one for the patients, but you have to change the skis over to wheels every year to deal with a trailer, so a little harder to maneuver around.
Can't believe those four-wheelers weren't being used, Mike. All those years you sat here and told us how we had to have them, we couldn't get rid of them. It's so much.
I'm innocent on that one.
Well,
Before them things.
Maybe they were before my time, but I
No,
haven't
they've
seen them
never
move.
moved, they try rotted where they are.
Well, one came up behind my house one time. One of the police was there because some lady got a.
I know one was bought for the police department.
What was it, throw thing?
Yes.
7 years ago.
And that one was donated to.
It's my observation, I'll leave it at that.
Any trading value on the squad?
Probably, yeah, because there's still some extrication equipment in there, and I'm sure there's a town in the far to reach places that can utilize that truck, so I have no idea what it would go for. It's got 14,000 miles on it, but we put $5,000 into it in the last year or two. Some good turbo issues, and it's had some, repairs done to it, so we will get something for it. Like you just don't utilize it like it was designed to be utilized.
You're side by side, you put, you're by the track assembly for one time.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll have a track assembly, so in the winter time you can go through deep
So
snow.
really.
Yeah.
Right here.
Yeah, we tried, like I said, we tried for a grant twice, maybe 3 times. I know at least twice. We weren't successful.
Good. Go home, folks.
Awesome.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chief.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome.